Welcome to Truth and Reckoning, a broadcast from CELDF. In this show, we'll learn from frontline organizers and communities fighting against environmental destruction. We'll explore different perspectives and innovative strategies for movement building, the potency and the potential of rights of nature, and effective action in defense of our communities. And we'll share inspiring stories of people working towards right relationship with the land and each other. I am your host, Max Wilbert.
Welcome, everyone. Today's interview is with Shannon Rowan. The interview with Shannon was conducted by Tish. So Tish, could you tell us a little bit about who Shannon is and why you had this conversation with her?
Yeah, thanks, Max. Actually, I saw Shannon on another podcast. That's how I became aware of her and her book. The book is called The Red Shoes, Our Devil's Dance with Technology and What We Can Do About It. It just, obviously with everything going on, we're getting so many requests from communities that are facing data centers coming into their community, and they're very concerned about that, there was this connection right away because she's a researcher, she's an activist. She's also written not just these books because The Red Shoes is it's a big book. It's like a war and peace book. So she was an investigative journalist, which you could tell. She has written several books in the past, and so I felt really good, like she's actually researched a lot of this stuff. I mean, she's not someone just giving her opinion, and she's also a Wi-Fi refugee is how she self-identifies, which means she's actually affected health-wise by all this technology. And she believes, and there's science to prove it, that many other humans are, and because humans are nature is being affected by it all too. So, and we're at a point in time, I think, where technology is obviously increasing at a really fast rate. And this idea that just because we can, should we, is a question that comes up. And just like with all the other issues, it's connected, like this idea that we can regulate it and we can be responsible. That was what was interesting about the interview, comparing it to other issues that, we've been involved in here at CELDF and tried to help communities with fracking, industrial agriculture. The system's set up the same. And so technology issues are also similar. And even from the aspect of propaganda and how it's sold to us and that we need it. And, so it was a really fascinating interview. We couldn't get through all of it. There's so much to the book, but we highlighted several points that I hope people find interesting.
It was certainly a fun interview to edit and produce. I wasn't familiar with Shannon's work, but there's some similarities, some overlaps, it seems like, with my book, Bright Green Lies, which is based on a critique of technology. This basic argument that technology is not neutral. And that's an argument that we hear all the time, is it's not the technology, it's how you use it. It's the people who use it. And I disagree with that. I think technologies are inherently political. They change what we do, they change our culture, they change our way of seeing the world. How can they not? They affect us in these profound ways, and they tend to do that in certain directions, in certain avenues. And so that's one reason why I enjoyed this conversation that you had with Shannon. And I think, as you mentioned, Tish, this is particularly relevant right now with the huge explosion in AI technologies that we're seeing. Mm-hmm. And going along with that, huge amounts of water use, energy use, not just driving up people's electricity bills, but also having impacts. I live here in Oregon, and on the Columbia River in the north part of the state, there's data centers which are operated by Amazon, by Facebook, other companies. And those data centers are discharging their wastewater that they use for cooling these massive banks of computers directly into the river. And that water is often 150, 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And so that's degrading even further the water, the water quality that the salmon and other fish, other wildlife rely on, that's already artificially elevated. Those temperatures are already artificially elevated because the river has been dammed so much.
When she actually does a whole chapter at the end about nature, and she mentions rights of nature. She mentions you in the book, Bright Green Lies. She talks about greenwashing and ecocide. So she does bring those elements in. She also, at the beginning, talks a lot about, the history of this, which is really interesting. So, and mind control, and that a lot of it is intentional. Like they know, just like the other industries, right? Like fracking, the people coming up with it, or the tobacco industry, they know, right, the harms they're going to cause. And so this is no different with technology, but this idea of even human obsolescence, right? So it's not even just all the other species, but she does talk about some of the species and how the technology is affecting them, but even us. And that it's intentionally made addictive. So the fact that, we're so literally addicted to it. That's why we're called users, right? Social media users. But that it's intentional. They know this. It's about mind control. And so, yeah, it was just interesting on so many levels.
One thing that I found fascinating about what's happening, fascinating and horrifying about what's happening right now with the rise of AI, once again, is that these tech companies, which formerly professed a devotion to addressing climate change by using renewable energy to power their data centers and their facilities and operations. We all know, if you've been following this work, if you've read my book, then you know that we have our own critiques of that. But these companies are even abandoning those pledges quietly behind the scenes. Quite a few of them have been abandoning their pledges to decarbonize, to become climate neutral in their operations precisely because of these massive power demands for their AI data centers. And all of this, of course, it's the myth of Icarus all over again, right? It's Pandora's box. It's opening this new technology to the world without any consideration of what are the consequences, what will the results of it be, what will come of it. And meanwhile, these speculators, these billionaires, the wealthiest people on the planet, are making massive amounts of money off of these technologies. Well, the mining, the water that goes into creating these things and cooling them, the impacts to local communities, the impacts on wildlife, on habitats which are being destroyed across the country and across the world for these data centers. It's a dystopian story. So I was really grateful to hear Shannon's words in this interview, to hear her bring this kind of robust critique that's informed by her personal experience with the effects that technology has had on her as an individual. And I think it probably has similar impacts on all of us. That's Wi-Fi, the impacts of radiation on people. It's one of those areas where there's very little incentive for studies to be done. Robust studies are actually very challenging to do on that type of health issue that is difficult to isolate to one factor, and there's no financial incentive. And so you see that there have been some studies done on higher levels of radiation. This is why there are recommendations like don't put your cell phone next to your head all day, every day, because you could exceed the recommended levels of radiation. And of course, CELDF has brought such a robust critique for so long of the regulatory agencies that aren't just captured, but were created from the very beginning, in many cases, by the industries that they're meant to regulate. So they're not going to protect us from these things.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're not aware of her, right? That's the thing. And it's like, I didn't know either. I learned about the radiation's only one aspect of it. It's the electromagnetic part. There's natural EMFs, but the artificial is drowning that all out, and how other species need that's how they navigate. And again, the cumulative effect of all this. So when you add the radiation and the electromagnetic stuff to all the other chemicals and toxins that were put, it's just overwhelming. And again, they did the studies, like you said. So that's what we're relying on, is the industry studies.
Well, without further ado, let's go to the interview with Shannon.
Welcome to CELDF's Truth and Reckoning. And I'm so excited today to be having a conversation with Shannon Rowan. She's an author and journalist and activist. She actually has Bachelor of Fine Arts. She is self-described as a Wi-Fi refugee. She's social critic, free-thinking fine artist, writer, geopolitical author and researcher, photographer, dancer, children's book author and illustrator, and EMF awareness activist, which if you don't know what that is, we're going to find out. She had a career as a photojournalist and contributed to major national and international news and travel magazines as both a photographer and a writer. She's the author of several books, including Wi-Fi Refugee, Plight of the Modern Day Canary, co-author and illustrator of Welcome to the Masquerade, Prelude to the Coming Reset, Shots Fired, Vaccine Weapons, Medical Tyranny, and the War Against Humanity, and her latest book, which we are going to be talking about today, The Red Shoes, Our Devil's Dance with Technology and How We Can Stop It. So welcome, Shannon.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm just really excited about this.
Yeah, we like to first talk about, I think we should just start by saying where we're physically located, because we at CELDF like to talk about being connected to place and where we are on this beautiful earth. Most of the people know me and that I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. But where are you, Shannon?
I'm in the wilds I'm in Bigfoot country, actually. Really, this is like most sightings of Bigfoot out here. So near the border of Oregon and very north part of California. So the real Northern California, people say, San Francisco's Northern California, but that's like central. I mean, we're way up here, Siskiyou Mountains. So yeah, it's, you're right. It's, in fact, it's so integral to my story, the connection with Earth and where I am and where I've been, because as I say, as a Wi-Fi refugee, implying that I've had to move to get away from Wi-Fi. That's what that really means. And anything like that, so non-native frequencies, non-native EMF, electromagnetic fields. And I found that, changing place is really key to, like, if you're stuck and you're in it, you feel terrible, you have anxiety, depression, whatever you're dealing with, change place, see how you feel, because we're connected to our environment. We can't not be, so, we think we're not, but I feel well here. And that has so much to do with getting away from these frequencies, but it also has to do with the mountains and the forest and the creeks and the rivers and the ocean. So it's just, yeah, a beautiful place to be. And I'm really grateful.
So that is the place where you feel the most connected, because we talk about it as, this idea that you're going to fight to protect something that you love and feel connected
Yes.
to. And that idea that we are nature and we're not separate from the ecosystem and from the environment,
Right.
one species within it. So
Exactly. Yeah. And I've traveled a lot prior to this. I can't travel now, but I would say I felt maybe more connected in New Zealand when I traveled there. But this is for me, it's like water, water, ocean. So if there's a place where there's a lot of water and trees, like that's kind of, that does it for me. So, because I was in the desert for years and it was beautiful in its own way. And there were I did felt connected there, but I missed water. And so I really,
yeah.
I have a water baby. So yeah.
Well, it is. That's one of our things here. That's me in Cleveland too, with the Great Lakes and Lake Erie. I like
Mm-hmm.
to be by water, and it's like, but it's running through my veins. That's the whole thing. So, I drink Lake Erie water. My mother drank it. That's one of the stories I always tell. So it's running through me. I can't
Yeah,
not, yeah, protect it. So
exactly. And we drink the creek water here and the river water here, and the whole communities are supported from the river water.
yep.
Exactly.
Well, let's get first of all the title of your book. I'd never heard of the story of the red shoes prior to, getting your book and hearing about your book. I know as kids, and as a child, I was read fairy tales and fables, or by the, library story time, did it with my son when I was bringing him up, or read things, like, I guess, Noah's Ark, and like, I'm thinking Hansel and Gretel, or the tortoise and the hare. And a lot of those were to teach us, lessons and morals and values and things like that. So I guess before we get into this, can you share the story of the red shoes?
Sure. And it's Hans Christian Andersen, so he's a big one, from well, couple centuries ago now. So and also when I knew about it as a child, but I think because of some of the adaptations of it in popular media. I actually remember a Smurf episode where Smurfette was caught in the red shoes and was dancing out of control. And it was a scary image. I'm like, oh, she can't get her shoes off and she's dancing all crazy, like, help Smurfette, poor Smurfette, right? But then I read it for myself in this is the version I'm using, which is slightly different retelling of it. In a book called Women Who Run with the Wolves. Do you know that one? The Women Who Run with Wolves. It was a really popular early 90s when it came out, and it was by a psychologist. And it's beautiful. She uses all these different fables and kind of interprets them and sort of, from the mental health perspective too, and psychological perspective, and what we're supposed to learn from them and how it, these stories, what we can still learn from them. So, yeah, The Red Shoes is really a story about addiction. It's about losing our sovereignty, about giving that away for the promise that this something that, something promises us ease and luxury and make our lives easier, that's the kind of bait, right? And that's how we end up losing our self-sufficiency and control over our bodies and our environment and our lives by giving into that desire to want something else to do things for us. So it's really this, sum it up, it's a little girl, young girl, I don't know, the exact age. We're going to assume like around puberty, maybe like that age or a little younger. She's actually an orphan and she's living alone in the woods, but she's actually doing okay for herself. Like she made her own red shoes. So she has these red shoes. They're crude, but she made them herself. So she's really proud of them. And she's made her own clothes. She's, forged her own way. But one day she's just feeling like it's hard, right? And then you get those days where you're like, it's hard to do everything myself. And along comes, right when she's feeling that way and vulnerable, this gilded carriage pulls up, and this old woman there's all this symbolism. So she's part blind, and that comes in to symbolize her intuition. So she's at a moment there when that happens, when she steps into that gilded carriage, I often like to say, or the cage, she's lost touch with her instincts and her intuition, and she's sort of like blinded in that sense. So she's because she's like just grabbing for something to take her pain away from her. So because the woman promises her she won't have to work anymore. She'll be looked after. She won't have to do anything. But, we, if any of us ever actually experience that, we're like, we don't have to do work. It's not actually a good thing. We don't want, once you become bored and you don't have a purpose, and then you just get further entrapped in addiction, right? So she ends up being taken home, and she is made to meet. The first thing that happens is the woman takes all of her handmade clothes and her handmade shoes and burns them, without her consent. And this is like already, it just crushes her, something inside her just is dying when this happens. And she's, becomes a kind of automaton. She's just sitting there in the house with a new dress, pretty dress and everything, but made to sit and be quiet and not do anything and just look pretty and shut up and obey, right? And like, and you have this isolation. She's indoors now. She's not connected to nature. So that's the first thing. She's totally removed from nature. She's always in the house. She's doing nothing. And then she has an opportunity to go choose new shoes with the old woman, but the old woman's part blind, so she doesn't see what's happening. And this transaction that happens with the older man, there's a lot of older men in this story too, which I think there's a reason for that. But she's picks these the shoemaker is like encouraging her to pick the red shoes that are glittering, and this is the counterfeit, so it's a counterfeit for her handmade shoes. And she's along with him winking like, oh, the old woman won't notice these flashy red shoes, which aren't really, she's a proper old woman to go to church. And of course, like that's not done. You don't wear those kind of shoes to church, but she did. And the church people were like, ooh, what are those shoes she's wearing? And didn't like that. But but they didn't do anything about it. So that was an interesting part of that too. Like they're seeing her, the beginnings of her addiction, right? So these new red shoes are that, like the thing that because she thinks by getting these new ones that she buys that are fancy is going to replace that sense of loss that she felt when she lost her sovereignty and she lost her ability to make her own shoes, and those shoes are gone. But they don't. What happens next is they're cursed by another man who is a soldier, wounded soldier who has a red beard, so it's like a devil figure. And he tells his shoes to dance, like she's going to dance, and the shoes, he kind of plays this music and she starts dancing. At first it's kind of like fun and wow, these shoes are dancing me. And but then she can't stop the dance, and like it's kind of in progressive stages, it gets worse and she can't take the shoes off. She finds she can't even take them off. At first she can take them off and she's sneaking, like, the woman who finally sees them says, oh, you can't wear those, but she sneaks it, and then she gets stuck in them. So eventually it's to the point where she's dancing through the woods for weeks. She's starving. She's not eating. She can't get out. And at this point, she doesn't want these things anymore, right? It's killing her. And she has no other choice. Another man in the woods, a woodsman with an axe, she begs for help, and he cuts her feet off with the shoes on them because she couldn't get the shoes off otherwise. So she is rendered completely crippled for life after that as a beggar. That's how she makes her way. Mm-hmm. So, when I read this again in recent years, and I thought that is the perfect analogy for what we're experiencing, I think, with our technology and this relationship with it and any addiction, but like specifically technology. So I use this as the backdrop to my research for really wanting to present and dissect like every aspect of how technology is the red shoes and is taking us on this out of control, self-destructive dance that if we don't take them off, in the early stages, then, we're left crippled and destroyed. So
it's so interesting because when I read that and I heard the story, like reading it in the book and then going through the whole book and the different chapters that you have, it really hit me. And even thinking about our progression, like through technology, like just in my lifetime or before, my lifetime, that, just even starting with the radio, right? Like, so the radio, and then people going in and sitting around the radio, and then it went to phones, right? Like telephones with wires connected, but then the TV came in around that time, and then computers, but they were big and bulky, and then the internet, and now smartphones, and now AI. But all of it has been building that separates us from external stimuli, like from nature and from other people in our community, and all of it is isolating us when we think the opposite, right? That it's like bringing the world to us. So yeah, it so much ties to our work with rights of nature, and yeah, that's what really like impressed me when I was reading this. It's like, this is like so connected. So do you have some more examples, like when you talk about it as an addiction, technology as an addiction, so that listeners can get a little bit what you researched? And just so you know, Shannon's book is not like short. It's a big book. It's like thick. I don't know. You can't see it probably here. You can't.
Oh, there you go. I think you got it there.
I don't know. You can't see it. Oh, because I have the blur. There it is.
Yeah.
But it's a big book. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And I want to just start by saying that it's designed to be addictive. So whether or not you feel, and we all have a degree of addiction with it, because it's, we're humans, our neurobiology is exploited through these technologies. We have been studied a long time how all these things work, how our brains work, how our emotion, so this is an exploitation of that in order to, because the end goal for all tech developers is user engagement. And emphasis on user, right? What other people do we call users? It's like drug users, right?
Right.
So user engagement, meaning the longer you engage with a product, the more money they make, the more profitable, the more trapped we become, addicted we become. But the design is for maximizing addiction, that potential. And with children, there's nobody free from this. Nobody, that is like outside of their sights that they want addicted, these tech developers. And and even if you're just checking your email once a day, or, if you feel, because you can always see like somebody else is more addicted than you, right? You can always look to like, and I do use a lot of extreme examples just to kind of drive the point home, but I'm addicted too. So I want to just say, I'm not coming at this as like somebody who I'm saying I'm better than everybody else. It's just I've had an opportunity to disengage more because I've had to, because of my reactivity to wireless radiation has forced me to give up cell phone use first 10 years ago. And then but what's interesting is a lot of people who are dealing with like what we call environmental illness, which is our environment being polluted and then reacting to that, so um often just advocating for like safer technology, like and more, it's still more technology, but just safer. They think also, I think somewhat erroneously, that if you can just wire the connection, if I'm not having like a debilitating migraine right away by connecting on, to the internet, I have a safer way, and I am hardwired here, or I wouldn't be able to do this. But I actually now am a lot more aware just through this research I've done of how I'm affected, no matter if it's a so-called safe connection, because there isn't really any safe use of a technology that's inherently harmful. It's harmful to human health, to the planet. So, for example, even now, like the screen emissions, I've found out there's screen emissions that are harmful. So I'm breathing in fluoride gases while I'm using my computer. I mean, to some degree, I don't even know how much, but it's happening. But also just like navigating the internet and going to use the email, now that I understand the design, and this is what I'm trying to, present to people so that we can make better informed choices, right? And just having the awareness helps to kind of disengage more and to know that it's dangerous. And the more I'm on it, the more dangerous it becomes. And the harder it is to get the shoes off. So just checking email is like a slot machine design. And so you have that like, the anticipation of the reward. The reward is the dopamine hit. And we get dopamine hits just opening emails. We get dopamine hits paying our bills. I mean, that's the design, and doing something that seemed like it would be very boring. It's not the same, research world as it was going to the library and looking through catalogs. It just is different how it affects our bodies.
Asking the librarian questions, right? Like
Yes.
human contact.
Human contact and contact with the environment. You could argue that research, of in any form, just reading can be a disconnection from our surroundings, but it is different still. There's a further disconnect that happens with screens, and that's what I'm trying to show. So I'm not saying like there's a perfect, really anything. Like, I mean, we're using this program platform to communicate right now and do the show, and I realize that that's a kind of hypocrisy on my end. I'm not a purist here. I'm just trying to present, what I've learned. And I am, constantly trying to disengage more. And I think that's what we need to be doing, even just to see the problem. But now I've gotten off track a little bit from your first question. So examples of stories of addiction, I guess, with technology, I have many of them. A lot of them are quite, shocking probably and sad, but I think once you read them, you kind of see like how, oh yeah, we are like, maybe I'm affected somewhat and my friends, and we're seeing people around us who just can't seem to look around them. But the interesting thing is that, or shocking or frightening thing is that, it's designed to be individualized. So if we can see this more in gamers. If you're not a gamer, if you don't play video games, it's easy to see kids like just really trapped in that, right? And like neglecting their homework and, and doing this in favor of physical activity, in favor of eating, in favor of sleeping. But we have there's gambling, there's pornography, there's shopping. It's like there's something for everyone. Social media. So I have a couple of chapters on social media addiction because and it, so it is I mean, there's like, okay, here's one story. I got a lot of the gaming stories from Nicholas Kadaras. He's a PhD doctor of psychiatrist, clinical therapist who has studied addiction and digital addiction, technology addiction extensively. He has a few books out. But one of his stories is about somebody he calls Dan, who came in, a 17-year-old boy who came into his office and looked very disoriented, and he wasn't making eye contact, and he looked scared. He's like sweating, he's looking around him, and he goes, finally he says, "Are we still in the game?" He didn't know. He didn't know he was in a doctor's office. He wasn't sure he was in the game, and he was frightened. And this is how extreme it can get, because there's this phenomenon called depersonalization, derealization, and the kind of words just kind of self-describe, right? It's like, so not knowing, depersonalization, not having feeling of being outside your body and your body not being real, derealization, like the world around you not being real and not being sure what's the game, what's reality. So these games are becoming so much more sophisticated and, realistic, at least for the player, that they're having, and the more they're engaged in that, they're really starting to not know what is what. And the thing about that is that this isn't by design. Again, virtual reality headsets, augmented reality, and mixed reality. These are all things that the tech gurus, the richest men in the world, who, all of them, all the richest men in the world own tech companies of some kind, right? They're involved in furthering this, and they want us to not know the difference. They want to blur the lines between reality and the virtual reality. That's the intention. So the next stage of like a Zoom meeting would be for your hologram to be in the room with mine there, and us sort of make it feel as real as possible, so we don't really start to not know the difference.
Yeah, that we don't know we're on our computers.
Yeah, I mean, they want it to be seamless, and and then with implants, and our biology combined with this machine to just completely change, and dictate our reality around us. So this boy had gotten to that level because he had been gaming so much, and it was, he was in quite a state. So the interesting thing is, Dr. K, as he's often called, got him to ground by just crumpling paper and clapping hands and things. So just start grounding in reality. And he got him into a program. I mean, he had to go into like a psych ward for at least a month or more, few months, to detox and to get grounded again. And he was motivated. He was frightened, and he didn't want to be living like that anymore. So he actually got rid of all his games and everything. But the incredible aspect of that story is that his mother called Dr. Kodaris and was like yelling at him. She was so upset because her son was now playing basketball outside. He wanted to go outside, and that upset her because she felt he was safer indoors, because she's a single mother working at Walmart, and didn't want her son to be outside where it might not be safe. It's this idea that it's safer, isolation is safer indoors, is completely false. And, the statistics bear out that predators are targeting children online, not in the real world. They're meeting them online. It's the easiest way to do that. So, so that's something that, adults need to look at, and parents need to look at their own belief system and behaviors. I mean, they're the ones who are being the example for children. We blame children, but it's the adults giving them the technology. It's just like in the red shoe story, it's the adults giving her the stuff. It's the adults, like encouraging the addiction, providing it for the child, and then not helping her, and so.
How many times I've heard, even, with new parents and, or new grandparents and that, and they have an iPad or an iPhone, and they are already encouraging, like, an 18-month-old or a 2-year, like, oh, and look at how smart they are, because they know how to turn it on and program, they can, hit the button. And I'm like, that's really intelligence? Like, I don't know. I think they're being trained.
You don't need to be intelligent it's not a marker of intelligence, right?
No, and one of the things I read, and I made a note of it here, is like you talked about the natural matrix, that how to control man, and how it dates back to the 1950s. The Department of Defense, the cyberneticians, I guess they're called, I
Yes.
didn't know those were, of the 1950s. And they came to understand that the brain, through residing within the body, relied entirely upon external stimuli for interpretation of external reality. And thereby came to realize that in order to fully control man, one must control the surrounding stimuli, and in other words, the natural matrix. So in other words, like again, people thinking like this is all new. This is new to, it's like this has been researched. I mean, it's like so many of our other issues and problems, right?
Oh, yeah. And I want to emphasize that cyber means, it's from Greek. It means to steer, which means to control. So cyberneticians were all about steering, guiding, controlling mankind and mankind's environment in order to control mankind. Like you said, it. And I wrote about, and I've written about this in another book, in Shots Fired, and a little bit in Welcome to the Masquerade, because it's so important. And it sounds boring. Oh, cyberneticians of the 50s, like blah, blah, blah. But it's like these people, and their books, it was so much more overt. It's like they started very overtly as saying, like, there's the book called, like, Man is Machine Programming, Programmable Machine. How do we control men and steer them? And they couched it in terms of, like, well, violence in society, we could nip it in the bud and get rid of it, and completely early on. We don't. And they'd say, well, it starts in the brain. It's a brain disorder, not a social one. And they'd sort of like start experimenting on all the disadvantaged people, and putting electrodes in their brain. So Elon Musk's new, Neuralink telepathy, as he's calling it now, started back with the brain doctors of the 50s, who were, a lot of them working for the CIA, were the Department of Defense, Office of Naval, office and everything. And they were working with the military, and they were working on, like, how to change men's behavior of humans and steer that. And they were used electrodes, they used radio frequencies, they used microwaves. So all of that predated our telecommunications going wireless, and knowing fully well how this affected the brain, how this affected human emotion and behavior, and how we can actually, like, even through screens, there are programs for changing mood and behavior through pulsations in the screens that we're looking at. We wouldn't even know that's happening. So I encourage people who are having issues with mood to get disengaged from the screens, or have children who are having those issues to disengage and see how they feel, get back to nature, in touch with that, and see how you feel. Because you are not separable from your environment. Again, that's kind of an illusion we hold. We think that we are in this kind of shell and armor, and we can just, and because we've gotten so used to sort of environments that we think we're controlling, artificially controlled, and like just even from air conditioning to heating inside, and feeling like that's a separation. And it is a kind of separation, but we've created, and we feel like that gives us a sense of control. And I think a lot of this just comes from our insecurity of, being in the wild and part of the wild, and what that makes us feel like, and the underlying fear of death, and wanting to control all of that. So we go along with this because we think, oh, maybe we could cheat death, maybe we could be more comfortable, and it's can be hard and harsh out there and in the wild, and we kind of put all these labels on the wild as if it's this scary, crazy thing that we ought to get away from, and we don't realize that we're actually creating a prison that's more harmful and toxic than the natural world could ever be. So yeah, there's these disconnects, but the cyberneticians were developing these technologies alongside when they were developing missiles, missile technology, remote controlling that. And so they sort of saw humans the same way. You could sort of steer these missiles, right, and these humans the way you want it to. And even just the communication network that was formed for the missiles was then used to create the internet. So we're all early military projects. And so this is just all offshoots of that. And it's just a continuation of it, and a just more sophisticated, fine-tuned, but yeah, emphasis on environment, controlling us, change environment, change the human, changes environment, which means changes stimuli. like the stimuli. Right now I'm on a screen. That's my environment change. That's what I'm focused on. I could be, what's so interesting to me is I see people, because I don't carry this around with me and I don't use cell phones and I'm not out there. When I go into outdoors, I'm not tethered to tech and so I really see it in other people. And I was just at a river swimming yesterday and there I am, somebody's sitting there. There's always somebody, usually a lot of people, more people than you want to see, staring at their screens. And I think you're not here. I mean, you think you're here, and you're not here, and you're not aware of your surroundings, which is really dangerous on many levels. But you're also the person who's the reason that we have to have these frequencies everywhere. You're not making an emergency call. You're not using this network for emergencies. That's something that I'm like, well, you could have a much reduced exposures in some of these towers for emergency communication, but that's not what's happening. This is somebody playing a game or whatever, doing something that's just not important, not important enough to just, and that's what's just normalized. People expect it. The more they expect it, they expect to be able to connect on their phones everywhere they go. And that expectation is going to keep driving this development and industrialization of every natural wild space.
Well, that's part of the propaganda, right? Because they sell it to us that this is good for us. This is going to make your life easier. That's always and that goes back to the red shoes story again, too, right? Your life is going to be better. You'll have more free time to do what you want. And and your free time winds up being spent scrolling, on this little
The infinite scroll. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, you'll have more time to shop. You'll have more
Yeah.
to play video games. It's all stuff that they're selling you, right? And then they're actually using you as they're sucking from you the life force. So
yeah, it's very parasitical. And it isn't. I mean, we have to ask ourselves, because the convenient label, right? Is it more convenient actually? Is it even that the thing? I don't think so. I feel like most people are frantically running around again in their red shoes, just out of control, dancing. They're, things are not easier. You're constantly having to update, upgrade something. You need a new app. It doesn't work anymore with the old one. Your old computer doesn't work. You need a new one. You need a new phone. And it's like, you're constantly upgrading. That's planned obsolescence. That's e-waste. That's devastation to our environment. And that's you just like never having that leisure time because it's always going to be consumed with something that you have to do for the machine. And you're then serving the machine and you're not serving yourself. So it's not more convenient. It was easier, more convenient to actually like walk into town to pay your bill somewhere in cash or with a check than any of these online programs. And the fact that there's no boundary between work and play anymore is really also destructive. And so just because you can doesn't mean you should. That's a message I try to repeat. Just because
I say that all the time
doesn't mean we should.
Yeah, especially with young people in college who are going into these as careers, right? And it's like, this whole idea of innovation, like that's I going through, that was another note I made when reading your book. I mean, we almost worship, right? Innovation, like innovating new, being an entrepreneur, coming up with the latest, greatest. And it's like we keep falling for it over and over again. And so I worry so much about the youth because they're being sucked into that. And that's what we value in our culture and society. Oh, but we never still, even though all the examples we have, I think back because everybody would say to us at the beginning and to me at the beginning as an environmental activist, right? Oh, we just need one really bad like catastrophe to happen, and I'd like list off 4 or 5, I'm like 6, 7 of them that just happened in the last year or two. Like,
I know.
Those aren't enough for you. Like how many do we?
Yeah. How many more do we? I mean, and and here's the other thing about technology. It's the ultimate distraction tool, right? So people's attentions, getting their attention, keeping their attentions. It's just like, oh, there was that train wreck and with the with the toxic fume and but then there's something else. It's just like so you get this news, those poor people wherever, whatever. There's the other one happening somewhere else. And then there's this game, and then there's this thing I'm gonna buy, and then there's this person that posted whatever to Instagram. And our attentions are so divided. And to quote Seneca, to be everywhere is to be nowhere. So you're really nowhere and you're doing nothing. You feel there's this, sense that you're completing things and you're accomplishing things, but you're accomplishing nothing and you're just wasting your time. And when you're wasting your time, you're wasting your life. And as I get older, that hits me the most. It's like you can't get back those years. You only have so many years left. How are you going to be spending them? I mean, this is sucking your time away, and your time sucked away again, and it is very counterproductive to any kind of environmental activism you want to, any goal you want to achieve it's going to be counterproductive because you're going to be constantly distracted from your goals. And that's where we're seeing it's such a hard thing because we have people who, and I see this all the time, really well-meaning people involved in all kinds of activism and that make excuses for their tech tether because they are so important. They have to have it because of their work that they're doing for the environment. Well, you're destroying the environment by using that technology. Are you really doing that much good? And then you're that example as well. And your expectations for the technology to provide you what you want and your frustration when it doesn't work fast enough and it's not, and it's like you get stuck in that and you're just and you're kind of like, I got to do this and I got to sign this and I got to get this out. And it's like, and then what have you actually done? And are you just is it even doing any good to sign petitions? And, I'm sorry, I've started petitions and signed them and there've been so many signatures and nothing happens. And a lot of that is because people individually on the individual level are disconnected from nature and they're not caring about their own backyard. You need to be focused. The best thing we can do, I think, is to be focused on where we are in our backyard and be like you said, if you care about where you live, you're going to fight for it. And if everybody did, and if they weren't thinking about somewhere else and always being somewhere else, which is what the portable screens allow. I mean, I've spent a year, they're cutting down my forest I live in. There was fire and then they, this beautiful place. My friend came to visit and she's like, oh, you've talked about it. But I mean, seeing it is like, wow, another thing. It's like Armageddon, apocalypse. She was using words like that. And mostly because of the logging, not because of the fires. And they want to log more. And even the local people near me, they're probably so engaged in their technology that they don't even make it up the mountain here to see that like around them looks fine. So they sort of like again, out of sight, out of mind. But it's like it's not that much of a drive to come and look. And if more people locally came and looked at where they live, they would be up in arms and they wouldn't be supporting the Forest Service and what they're doing. They would fight it. And it's like, but I get them. The most they'll do is sign an online petition. And I spent so much time doing that. And then it's like, well, where are you in the real world? And like, there's the office down the street from you. Go talk to these people, come out in person. It's so much of a stronger message and, works so much better if you're actually like speaking to these people, you're coming out, you're there, you're not just like behind a screen. So I think it's just like, it's going to have to be something where we all care enough and we're all involved enough. I don't know. Because, policies, legislation, I mean, all of these organizations, all these agencies are owned by the same people destroying the environment. I mean, I could give you an example, and I think this is if you don't mind me jumping ahead to this, but, because you were asking in your notes you sent me like about the parallels with, EMFs and technology and
Can you first explain for people what EMF?
Oh, sorry. Right.
is?
Yeah, we're getting way ahead of
forgot
it.
to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not everybody knows
Okay.
those
Yeah, we're
acronyms.
talking in these acronyms, and I should explain. So EMF is electromagnetic field. And when we use this, we are referring generally to non-native, like artificial man-made EMFs, because the Earth has an EMF. The Earth has one that's productive, that's supportive of biological life. We need it. All animals, plants, insects, everything needs this field. It's like something that supports life, but it's drowned out now in so many places most of the time with the artificial electromagnetic field, which is just so much more powerful and it's again non-native. I want to emphasize that because it is not native to the planet. It's alien. These are alien frequencies, right? It is non-compatible with biological life. I mean, that's the fundamental aspect that, like, I mean, there's so many studies, there's so many, we could talk for hours about why and kind of dissect that. But on just that level, it's just to say, it's non-native. That's why it harms us. It's not compatible. It's not compatible with our cells, or anything
And so
biological.
it comes from all the, like the Wi-Fi has
Oh,
it,
sorry. Yeah.
cell phones, the 5G, when you hear people talking
Yes.
5G, we need that. And
Yeah.
so all the different places we're getting where it's being installed, I guess, in our
Yeah.
communities. And it's a lot of the wireless
Right.
things, right?
It's
Okay.
also, so there's different kinds. So there's power lines, which are low frequency, not high. So high frequency would be the wireless stuff, and that would be more like microwaves, or there's a spectrum, EMF spectrum. So you've got like X-rays on one end and then like power line low frequency on the other and everything in between. So there's, when you say microwaves and radio frequency, they're similar, but slightly different on that spectrum, but they do similar things and similar problems biologically, and same with X-rays. So we all kind of know that X-rays are harmful now, although I think they're trying to shift again and say it's not so bad. You go to the doctor, we're just taking a picture. But here's your lead shield for your organs, not a lead shield for your head, for that organ, but but where's our lead shield for like the cell phone, right? I mean, it's the same. They try to say it's different. It's not, though. I've looked into this, really not different. And so it's not so different. And so but it took decades and a lot of people caring about the effects of X-rays to get any awareness to the public. I mean, this was used much more prolifically than it is now in terms of like consumer products with X-rays. There were people had parties where they're X-raying each other, garden parties. They had shoe fitting X-ray machines that kids could just play with because it was harmless. How many things we've been told are harmless, and oh, whoops, sorry about that.
Yeah. But although the
Later.
industry that developed it knew
they
about the
know, of
harms,
course,
right? But they
They-
don't, they
and they
hide
have to,
it.
and they'll protect themselves and their children because they have that inside knowledge, but they don't care what happens to those minions of consumers. So this is the same. And the problem really is the so we talk a lot about there's a focus on the radiation, as in like heating effects in the body, thermal heating effects. And so all the standards that have been set for cell phone use are based on something called SAR, which is it's specific absorption rate, and that's the absorption rate of radiation into your tissue. But it's a uniform model, and we're not uniform, and it doesn't affect us uniformly. So that's part of the problem, because they'll make like a uniform exposure models. So it's like they'll say this kind of like much coming out of the cell phone is going to, uniformly do this to your body or brain. But actually, it doesn't do that. You'll have hot spots, from where you're closest to it and where you use the side of your head. Maybe you develop a tumor there because you had so many. So there is an issue with thermal effects, but that's less of a problem actually than the electric and magnetic aspect of the electromagnetic field are both so powerful. They overpower the electrical signaling in your cells and in your brain. The brain and heart especially function on electrical signalings. And if that's disrupted, I mean, pacemaker literature, if you have a pacemaker, it says don't get near radio frequencies. It could cause it to malfunction, so because, yeah, yet people, do this. So we're bathed in this now. I mean, there's just
That's
more
the
and
other
more and
thing.
more.
People
Yeah.
don't look at, and that's what and me, I started in this work because of oil and gas drilling and fracking and all that. But it was, and it's the same. It doesn't matter if it's that issue or
Yeah.
if it's what you're dealing, because it's like the system's set up and nobody's measuring the cumulative effects. Even
Right.
recently, it's been a bit about fluoride, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
even vaccines, those two it's like we're all the same, like we're all cookie cutter images. And it's like we're all
Right.
different inside. I said to somebody I was talking to about the fluoride in the water, and they're like, "Oh no, it's good for your teeth and it's safe and it's all this stuff." And I'm like, "How do you know? Like you don't know how much water people are drinking. One might only drink 1 8-ounce glass a day of it, right? Another person might be drinking 2 gallons of that water a day, and you don't know how many other exposures they have to
Exactly.
other chemicals and toxins, right? Same thing with the vaccines. You don't know. We're not all the same. And so that should be like a red flag right there.
Oh, exactly. And I mean, what's really, you'll love this. So the standards, today's standards of cell phone use are based on 1993 model of something called SAM. It's a standard anthropomorphic male model. It's a mannequin that was 200 pounds, 6 feet tall, with an 11-pound head, a massive head, uniformly gel filled, which is not how our brain is, and everything inside our, and there's
Well,
just
maybe some people's are. No, I'm
well,
kidding.
maybe no, but I mean, no, it's like they're not taking into consideration like the fat layers and just so many aspects of the brain and the complexity of it. So very simplified test, right? And so there's this, and the cell phone from first G. So we've got 5G now. We're up to 5G, first generation cell phone held away from this head like 6 inches or something, and he makes a call. No, sorry, it's like an inch, and he's making the call. It lasts 6 minutes, and that's the standard. Since it hasn't been changed, has not been updated. So as if anybody makes a call that short, in a day, and or as if that's the only exposure. What about everybody else's cell phones about? What about, and this is only about the thermal effects. There are biological effects that are non-thermal. So the emphasis on thermal has been kind of a distraction from more damaging issues, the more, the issue of the electromagnetic field itself as in terms of the power level of that versus natural EMF. So so there's this corruption because there's these regulatory bodies that basically it self-regulates, because you have the FCC, which is supposed to be in charge of overseeing standards set for exposure levels. And first, even so we have a better standard than some places like Mexico, which has nothing, but we have one of the lowest standards in the, say Western world, developed world, even the world itself, so people don't realize that the US has a very low standard in terms of what they allow as permissible exposures. And there are other countries that are starting to make more changes, like in France, they're limiting. In France, you can say oh, I want to know what I'm getting exposed to on this street in this street corner, and they have to tell you, and it has to comply with something. Here, it's not even though we have a standard which is really low and 10,000 times lower than say in Europe, it's not even checked. Nobody's going around checking to see if it's even complying with when they put a new antenna up on your building or the corner, and the lamp post on your corner is turned into a 5G emitting thing. They don't even check it. So it's just so Wild West right now and out of control. And it's just getting worse with the Internet of Things, every single thing transmitting, because everything has to connect to the internet. And then we want to have the Internet of Forest and the Internet of Ocean and the wireless mesh, which is over the forest, to help manage and monitor it, as if it's going to help nature to introduce a foreign frequency that is disruptive to especially insects that use that navigate with the electromagnetic field of the earth that's drowned out. So birds, migratory birds and butterflies and insects cannot get that signal they need. They have pieces of magnetite. We have it too, and cryptochrome, magnetite, that are things that help them kind of attract that field and feel. They see that. That's how they see, and that's how they're able to go really travel long distances. And we have a magnetic sense too, that it's just we're not in touch with that. But research, especially before we were really drowned out, that field was drowned out so much with the billions of devices and that infrastructure. Blindfolds were put on people spinning around in a chair, and they could tell you where north is or something, or taken in a van with blindfolds, and they figure out they weren't thinking about it. If you think about it, you'll interfere with that, but you actually do know where north is. Well, we used to. I think we don't so much now, right? So
Thanks to GPS and everything else.
Well, and thanks to the interference with our brain that has the magnetite in it, that is because when they did that same experiment with a magnet strapped to people's heads, not even like a cell phone, but I think they've tried a cell phone too. They don't know they can't point the right direction anymore. So, this is part of our disconnect with nature too, is not even knowing where we are. And especially because people, like you said, the GPS is replacing our innate, our ability to just not innate, but like something learned too. Wayfaring was something taught, and native peoples who are more connected with the earth, they would teach young people, they learn really young to wayfare, which is like finding your way in nature with the very subtle clues, things that we're so disconnected. Again, we wouldn't even know how to do. And it seems natural and inherent to them, but it is something they learn. It's something they learn even just through experience and being connected to nature. I mean, you're going to learn how to navigate it, but it's gotten so bad with GPS, not just GPS, but just phone apps and looking at screens and not looking around you, that people really don't seem to even know where they are. Again, like, how do you care for your world if you don't even know where you are and you're not even looking around and you don't experience it? You don't experience it enough to even sense that these things around you, nature, are alive and that they're your fellow beings, fellow creatures, part of your community. That's how I feel in my garden and where I live, that it's my community, that these are my friends, and I want to communicate and talk to them and be around them. And it's company, it's companionship. We're lonely because we're so disconnected from that. I mean, we're lonelier and lonelier as all these extinctions happen, as all these animals and insects disappear. And
I had written down a note from the
mhm.
book that I wrote, and you said, our screen-based gaming, shopping, chatting, and video watching gives us the false sense of doing, achieving, and becoming while depriving us the authentic experience. Through our screen portals, we may feel as if we've been transported elsewhere, but just as in the case of drug trips, in reality, we are seated, immobile, alone in a chair, not going anywhere, not moving our bodies, not actually interacting with others or nature. We are in cages, even when out of doors, and we don't even realize it.
Yeah, I wrote that, huh? That sounds
That was in your book. That's very good, huh?
yeah, yeah. I'll have to get to have it read back to me. So yeah, that's no, but that's yeah, I agree with what that person
What you
wrote.
said, yeah. I guess one of the things we keep talking about the EMFs and like
Oh
the harm,
yeah.
the dangers, but why not? What are some of the actual like physical? You
Mhm.
talked a little bit about the addiction
Yeah.
issue, but what are some other like actual physical? And you said like you had to leave and
Oh,
being
sorry. Yeah, I
by
didn't really tell my
Wi-Fi and stuff.
story.
Well, and other people suffer from it. So I mean,
Yeah.
maybe we should just touch on that so our listeners know what you're talking.
Yeah, because I sound like a crazy person, but but it is okay. So you were talking about arcs, like for example, the fluoride. Well, how do you know how much fluoride that one person is getting versus the other person? We're all different. So, people ask, well, why do you feel it and I don't feel it? I don't think some people think they don't feel it. I think that everybody does feel it to some degree, but they're so saturated in it, and they're in that new normal of not feeling very well is like the new health standard. The bar keeps lowering for the health standard because as we get sicker and more poisoned.
Mhm.
So, what people think is good, feels okay is like they never felt better because they don't get away from they've never been away from. I mean, now we've got a generation that's growing up that's never been away from these fields, these
Mhm.
artificial fields. So, um, why I react in what they're calling a hypersensitive reaction is, I think, to do with like a threshold for me, for my body, reaching a threshold level, poison accumulative, because it is cumulative. Um, and like coupled with chemical vaccine injury, exposures where there's nerve damage, it's injury, it's a type of injury, that inflammation injury that causes a response of more inflammation that's so acute and so rapid that I feel it. That's how I see it. Excuse me.
Well, and when you take
Mhm.
into account too, because again, from the environmental activist perspective, right? And so they're
Mhm.
focused on things like chemicals, right? So whether
Yeah.
it's big ag, and so the pesticides being used, or the glyphosate being sprayed, or from fracking, the different. I mean, there's a whole just stew of
Yeah.
chemicals, right? That were
Mhm.
in the air and in the plastic production,
Mhm.
right? And plastics in the water. And so that's, again, that whole idea. So you have all that toxic stew that's in our food. We're breathing it, we're eating it, we're drinking it. And now you add on top of that
Yeah,
this, the
another
exposure.
assault.
Right.
And I have what they call, I'm also have MCS, which is multiple chemical sensitivity, which and so EHS, because I know you wanted me to cover these acronyms too. EHS stands for, and I use a lot in my book, stands for electrohypersensitivity, electromagnetic hypersensitivity. EMS is electromagnetic sensitivity. EMS is the official term that's been used like for regulatory issues, but not in practice. So the United Nations, since like 2001 or two, I think it is, has recognized EMS as a functional impairment, so a disability, that requires accommodation, but we don't get it. We're we're one of the most marginalized groups of people you can think of. If you think about how much, and I know because I've looked at the world and where I can go away to get away from it, and there's almost nowhere. There's nowhere that's completely away. There's no country, there's no society that doesn't have this, right? So,
Although
um,
you do tell a story in your book about the Amazon. I think it was in
oh
the
yeah.
Amazon, right? And that was so sad. It broke my heart.
Yeah. Yeah, Starlink is now in the Amazon. And well, in my Wi-Fi refugee book, I also tell about how, because some people joked you should go to the Amazon, and the Amazon actually before Starlink was already one of the most saturated places in terms of just experimenting with how listening with satellites and listening to, they're saying they have technologies they can listen to like a twig break in the forest because they want to, I don't know. It's like it's been very targeted, I think. And a lot of wild places are, and I don't know if wonder about the coincidence of the massive online shopping platform being called Amazon as well, and it's the Amazon's being further destroyed. And no thanks to Bezos and you know um his company, what his company's doing, developing AI, developing all these things that are destroying our environment through mining practices and literally clearing the rainforest in a lot of cases for mining for the technology. But in addition to that, in terms of destruction of culture, was what you're referring to in my chapter on human obsolescence, is the last tribal remaining people who were not touched by like Western, whatever. I'm not going to say Western culture, I'm going to say industrialized culture. Because there's so much is from the East now. I don't know why we keep saying West, but it's like most of it from the East is where the digital technologies are coming developed, right, and manufactured. So industrialized technology, they were free from this hunter-gatherer society, still living completely in touch in harmony with nature, have Starlink, thanks to some supposedly humanitarian efforts to bring us to these people, which translates to money. It's actually government funded. They're getting free iPhones to connect with it. People are trekking out into the jungle with these Starlink antennas and powering them with solar panels. So all of a sudden, these people who were protected from all the ills of what we call civilization have been exposed to the worst things, that they never were exposed to. They were spared. Okay, maybe they missed out on some things we could call benefits, but they were also spared the horrors. And now they have internet, which means first person shooter games, which means ISIS beheading recruitment videos and extreme violent pornography. And just like that, they've got that, and it's immediate effects on how, especially the young people, but also the older people who are just completely immediately addicted. It's so addictive, and they're having trouble now with the youth paying attention in their meetings, having interest in their traditional arts and crafts. And and the problem with that is if they lose interest, they don't eat. I mean, they still have to hunt, and they are spending their time on these games and
Mm.
social media. I mean, they're seeing that young men are being more aggressive toward the women. They're wanting to act out what they're seeing on pornography, and they're forcing themselves on the young women. So the violent immediate effects, and like irreversible. How do you come back from that? And so, there's still some tribes who haven't got it, but they want to get it to all of them because they say they get to Oh, work opportunities. Oh, that's, I mean, they're work opportunities. I mean, they're, they have work, they have their culture and work. They don't need ours, and the only reason they'll need it is if their land is gone and they don't have anything to hunt or gather anymore probably
That's
because
the
of
whole point, right?
technology. Yeah, I
It's
mean,
colonization. I mean, it's like that indigenous people and their knowledge have survived in these pockets, and that now we're saying we need to learn from them, and that, well, if they destroy those last pockets with
yeah.
technology, you know.
Exactly. And look how much we're trying to relearn that we've lost because of what we've done already. I mean,
Mm.
native plants, medicines, we don't know how to use them still. Like they're there, right? In our yards, in our backyard sometimes, and we don't know how to use them. We don't have anybody to ask, where are the elders? And how do we farm, and how do we have farming practices that are harmonious, with our environment and not destructive? All these things and how do we make our clothing? How do we do these things that basic things, basic survival things, and not just survival. I think I'd like to emphasize that these skills also, gave us another sense of fulfillment and are fulfilling on a lot of levels than just survival. Because you're making something. It's a craft. You're just making something with your hands is something that's very fulfilling. And it isn't, these are all counterfeits we're offered. Like that quote from the book that you just read. When we do the thing online, it's nothing. What did you do? What did you really achieve when you get to another level in a game? It's not tangible achievement. It's not, you didn't do anything. Nothing. You're just wasting your life, and at least when you create something in the real world that can last, and it could be something that's passed through the generations, you can leave your mark on the land in a positive way. I've been making ponds this summer, and it's amazing. Just a little pond, frog pond. What that does, there's more birds, there's snakes, there's frogs, there's insects, there's dragonflies. It's comes back, because, and we are not, I don't like to have this. There's a negative attitude that's, I think, encouraged maybe by the same people imprisoning us with their technologies, that we're a scourge. It's the human race that needs to go. The only way we're going to save nature is to get rid of humans. Maybe if we get rid of the 1% that's causing all the destruction. But the rest of us, I mean, we go along with it almost just because we don't know better or we lost our knowledge or whatever. But we can impact our environment in such positive ways to benefit all kinds of creatures. Because again, if you see yourself as part of it and as these creatures you want to have around and as your company that we used to have as company, and do things to, I mean, there were used to be, I've read that the amount of ponds that people that used to be, and because of new agricultural practice, industrial agriculture, don't exist anymore. There used to be ponds everywhere. People always had ponds for their animals to drink out of. They would just
A pond at the end of my street growing up that we would ice skate on in the
I was
winter.
gonna say, and then you go swim. I mean, people didn't have swimming pools. They just walked in the countryside and jumped in a pond
Mhm.
because, or jumped in a lake or a river. You didn't have swimming pools full of chemicals. Again, and that happened. It's all these like reactive kind of things. Well, oh, we just polluted. It started with like polluting polluting practices that then contaminated the places we swam. So then you're like, well, now we got this crazy bacteria because of the algae and it's toxic. And so let's make a pool that we're going to make sterile, so-called, so that people can swim again. And,
Mhm.
you know, then you just don't have, nobody's maintaining, the ponds disappear, they dry up. But yeah, we can do things. Humans are not, it's just how we view ourselves. And when we view ourselves as disconnected, we become disconnected. We become the problem, but if we're not, then we're part of it, the nature that we can work together with.
Well, it's so funny, that whole idea, because we're working on now this idea of community resistance and resilience, right? That whole thing. And how do you have to resist certain things. So that may mean, right, not being online so much, not using the technology as much. Maybe, like you said, it's not 100%, but we definitely can, you don't have to be scrolling and just looking at stupid posts on Facebook or like that. Is that necessary? No.
Well, and
Shopping.
it's a type of hypnosis.
Right.
And so it's not, and I don't want to blame people who get caught in that, because we all can. but you have to, it takes a lot of conscious awareness and discipline to remove ourselves from this. The technology is not going to do it for you. It's not going to create a boundary for you. You don't need a new app. You need to consciously step back and put boundaries back on your life where we used to have, and so that you have more free time to do things that really are fulfilling and that are gonna make you feel better about your life and the time you spent here on Earth while you're alive. So, but the infinite scroll is one of those things that is designed to keep. It's hypnosis. It
Well,
is
yeah, and when you're
hypnosis.
doing that, you're not going outside and making a pond
No,
for other
you're
creatures,
not.
right?
You will not have
You're
time.
not planting some native plants for the bees,
No,
right, to come back,
right.
because we all only have so much time in the day, and we can choose,
Yeah.
yeah, how we want to spend some of that time. But one of the things too, you mentioned about, and I get criticized a lot of times for this if I bring up, like you said, except if we got rid of the 1%. But
Right.
I like the Bezos, Jeff Bezos, and
Yeah.
Bill Gates, and Elon Musk, and all them, and
Yeah.
I'll say things like, but they're doing this intentionally, like they're evil. And I'll even say that. I'll go, they're evil. And
Mhm.
people, like, I can't believe how often they push back. And they'll be like, no, they're not really evil because they don't know, I don't think they're greedy. They might be greedy, but I don't think they really have intent, because in our law,
Mhm.
that's always a big part of it,
Oh
the
yeah.
intent, right? And I know you told the story. I mean, I've read stories about Bill Gates before and stuff and where he comes from, but I love the way they portray themselves. The one I didn't know was the Jeff Bezos story.
Mhm.
And again, how portrayed is like he's the son or whatever of a hardworking, or grandson or whatever
Immigrants.
immigrant. Yeah. And but then when I read what you researched, it's like that this immigrant grandfather, Lawrence P. Geis, I guess, was far from
Yeah.
poor and humble, as the image evokes. He was director of the Atomic Energy Commission and just so happened to have been a key player in approving and funding ARPA. And that stands for, again, what does ARPA stand? I know
It was the ARPA is the research arm of DARPA. There's DARPA. I'm sorry.
the defense, right? That stands for
DARPA Defense. Oh, no, I'm going to forget. Advanced Research Project Agency.
okay,
Advanced
right.
Research Project Agency. So it's like the research arm of the Defense Department.
Okay.
Right.
That's advanced arm. All right.
Yeah.
So in addition to monopolizing the online consumer market, Amazon is also the largest government and military cloud storage provider on Earth. Bezos's grandfather was a naval intelligence officer who also played a pivotal role in shaping DARPA and developed nuclear warhead surface-to-surface ballistic missiles technology. Geis also signed over control of the Rocky Flats plant to Dow Chemical in the 1960s, setting up Bezos to be heir to Monsanto and now one of the world's richest men, second next to Elon Musk at the end of 2024, in large part thanks to pandemic policy lockdowns that so inflated Amazon shopping sales. Bezos' wealth grew from $113 billion on March 18th, 2020 to $204 billion on September 13th, 2024. So in 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just
Um,
curious, do you think any of it's intentional, or do you think
okay. Yeah, so I want to step back and say evil's a charged word, and I think that's why people react, right? Because we all have our different concept of evil. Maybe we grew up in a religion where they just that fire, brimstone, evil, and you kind of want to get away from that. So it's hard for people to hear that word and not react emotionally. So I like to say,
understand
yeah, and I think we need to kind of like redefine what we mean by evil, maybe, right?
that?
So yeah, intent is part of it, but I think that because I wonder, we just have to like those are theories we can't know for sure.
Yeah. Mhm.
If they think they're doing something good or not. And I think that so what I like to say is they're alien, they're inhuman, they become alienated. So they're alienated from the natural world. They're alienated from what it's like to be human. So in a way, they're aliens. They're not human anymore. They've lost their humanity. Somewhere along the way, they've lost their humanity. And so it doesn't have to be reptilians or little green men or whatever coming from another planet. It can be, humans who are no longer human in the sense that I think is the most important definition of human and humanness is having empathy and compassion, like our two most important traits, and connection to nature. So when you lose those things, you become alienated from those, from that. So when you become an alien to the natural world and to those things, you could do really evil things. You could be, from our perspective, who still care about these things, who still have these traits, the things they do seem monstrous and evil, and they have that effect. And because it's harming, right? It's harmful. So you're hurting, you're causing more suffering and pain than is necessary. And when you become an instrument of like suffering and pain, whether or not with intention, it's pretty evil, right? And it has that
Well, and
effect.
that's my point, that they're
Yeah.
generational, right? This isn't like just
Right.
a new person coming along
No.
who comes up, invents some, and it
No.
doesn't know, right, what the consequences, or, they're like a new entrepreneur or innovator, right?
Like neither of us is going to reach that status. Nobody I know, nobody who was actually from humble origins is going to become a multi-billionaire. It's like impossible to have that happen. It is the old money really behind this. It's the power structures. It's those families that have had that power for generations. They're raised in a very different way from how they're not raised with the same concepts of humanitarian concepts.
Well, no,
And
same thing with his father being connected to Rockefeller, right? So
right.
this goes back. This isn't, or his grandfather, I guess. I'm sorry, it was the grandfather.
But then you're called a conspiracy theorist. It's very difficult to talk about these things because those labels, and they're everywhere, and it's like constantly reinforced. So who's reinforcing those labels? Who's reinforcing these ideas? But the search engines on the internet, Google, which is who's owned by, who started that, So yeah, it's a hard topic, that's why I'm
But
always
that history is hidden a lot,
the
too,
history,
right? And you really have to dig and read books like yours by researchers who've actually dug deep to find some of this history that isn't accessible.
It isn't very, yeah, you're not going to find it with the general internet searches, right? And it's harder and harder to find because they are getting kind of like the algorithms are getting re constantly fine-tuned to keep us from getting to the information we need. So that's another part of the problem. But again, who developed them? What is their intent? If their intent is to steer mankind and to control mankind, again, I think they could still convince themselves that they're doing good things. And it's delusional, but they may not see themselves that way because they may have grown up in a different kind of world from ours and system, and more lack of morals, whatever standards that tell them that they're the elite. They're in these positions that are of elite privilege and power, and they feel that they have to control the masses because they'll have chaos and they'll have an uprising and they'll have all these things to deal with. And we are just not, to think that any of them are going to care about any of us is frankly, very naive. I mean, they're not, it's like, even like, and I mean, this is going to sound bad in a way, but like from our position, if you're thinking about, we're not in positions of power generally to do things about this. But if you think about the, you know, millions of starving Africans somewhere or something living in dire poverty that we can't even imagine, it is heart-wrenching, but we don't feel we can do anything. So in a way, we disconnect from that, right? And we say, well, I can't help solve that problem. So yeah, poor people out there, but am I really going to care if they die? I mean, personally, I have to think about my family first, right? And my community first, people close to me first, and that's natural. But they're doing the same thing on this other level. Kind of, that's why I see it as like they have their protect their own, first. And that means something different than what it means for us. And so if we're fallout, if there's fallout casualties and that, I'm part of that. Like people who become more sensitized, who die first from exposures or whatever, are just, the what's the word, collateral damage. And they're looking at it from that business kind of management perspective. They can't care about each and every one of us. There's so many of us, and it's like, but they feel like they're in this position where they have to manage. And maybe that's part of the problem, right? They're kind of taught that, like, that they have to manage these systems. It's better if they use AI and things that would help them have more efficiency with it. But they do, yeah, in control, but they have to have a disconnection from us emotionally to have, to do their job. That's how they're seeing it, probably.
Well,
I mean,
that's like
yeah,
saying that the CEOs of the cigarette companies who saw the
yeah.
research
Oh, right.
smoking caused cancer, right? And they said, "Oh, just hide that little fact. Don't worry about that. We're going to make so much money selling them," right?
Well, and
So I
that's,
guess where
yeah.
my point is, the people like we don't know that. We don't have, and that's a lot of the people working for the companies didn't know that stuff, right?
Well, and that's, yeah,
They
that's a good
have the
point.
data. They have the research and the
Yeah,
data.
they
That's
do.
when you said a lot of them are keeping their kids away from it. Why?
Right.
Because they know it's
Right.
bad, right? So, but what they're making a decision saying, yeah, we know it's bad, but we're going to make a lot of money. So don't tell them out there that it's going to hurt their kids. And
Right.
that's
And
the part I
yeah.
find, and it's my personal, definition, I guess. That's evil to me.
No, it is. And I was actually going to circle back to that because I'm kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit to say, well, that's what I could see that point of view, like, well, and it's a bit of an excuse, but yeah, like you said, and what it comes down to for me is that when you have the foreknowledge, then you have intent. Because if
Mhm.
you have the foreknowledge that something is going to harm people, then that should equate as intent. And I think legally that would equate in a court of law as intent. So
Right.
whether or not you think you are intentionally harming people, you know it does harm them and you allow it to happen and you don't stop it. And you develop something that's harmful and you have access to that information. If they don't, maybe like there are some, because there's a hierarchy and the structure level, and maybe some of them don't know, but that's their own, they should have looked. I mean, if I can find out, then they need to, and if they don't, they can say they don't know. I mean, it happens. I think it happens. There are doctors, for example, who don't know about vaccine harm and they give
Right.
vaccines to kids all the time. But
Right.
why don't they know? They didn't do their own work. They didn't do their due diligence and look into it. That is still on them. That's still their fault. They are at fault. Did they have
Right.
intent to harm those children? I guess that's my point. Like, they don't always necessarily like think I want to harm children. They maybe think they're doing something good. They were told that it was good. They
Right.
trusted that. So it depends on what level you're at, but the very high up where they should know better. And
Or
they're
the
developing it. They're developing it.
right.
It's not like the person, the minion who's like told to give it and they believe just without doing research that it's not harming it, it's helping people. They think they're doing something human. Maybe the people who brought Starlink to the Amazon tribes think they're doing something good, and they're told they are, but they
Mhm.
didn't do their work to double check on that. I mean, that's where it comes down to personal responsibility now and how we all should be
Mhm.
doing that. We need to stop making excuses and saying, well, I didn't know better. I followed orders. I just stop believing stop being naive and believing the authorities. I mean, because that is a kind of shirking of responsibility it's a lazy way to say, well, I'm just going to trust these authorities and these organizations, these agencies, let them do the work for me. And I'm going to do what they tell me to do, and I mean, well, then yeah, well, then that's to your own detriment. It's to your own family's detriment. It's to everybody's detriment if we get lazy about it. And so that's where it's like back to the personal level responsibility.
Yep. And that just like it ties into it's really, talking about rights of nature and our work. And I appreciate because you mention it in the book, which is great as you get towards the end. And I love you use the title Coming to Our Senses, which I think that's great. And I love some of the quotes you have, like the Krishnamurti quote from 1960, where it says, "It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." I love
Yeah.
so, and we're always getting that question too, and I'm sure you are too. Well, what are we supposed to do? Like, what can we do? Um, and I think what you just said, really, that's what we always say too. I mean, like, even just, the word citizen gets thrown around, whether it's citizen of the earth or citizen of the community you live in or of this country, right? But it takes effort. I mean, you can't just say, "Oh yeah, I'm a citizen and I go vote once every couple of years and that's I fulfilled my obligation to my community or my country or whatever." It actually takes more than that. You have to participate. You have to be part of, what's going on and being aware I know one of our partner advisors, Camilla Vergara, she's talks a lot local self-governance. She helped in Chile when they put their new constitution and developing, like talking about citizen assemblies and things. And I had heard an idea from her, and I'm like, at first it was like my gut reaction was like, first, like, it's like, ooh, I don't know if that's a good idea. But then the more I thought about it, I'm like, I like this idea that we don't have elections for elected, for representatives of our community, that it's kind of like what we do for like jury duty. Like you're all in the pool, you live in that community, and your name's getting thrown in the pool,
Mm,
and your number's going to come up to be like
mm,
a town council representative, whatever you call it. It forces you to then you think like, well, I have to pay more attention what's going on because my name could be called
right,
next, you
right.
know. So I'm like, I kind of, the more I thought, I'm like, I kind of like
Mm,
that idea. Whereas
mm-hmm.
the elections are so easy to just like, it's other people's responsibility and job. Yeah.
Right,
So, well,
absolutely.
anyway, yeah, I really, I don't know. I just think it's amazing, like, because we're on this verge of this, like with AI, like that's all I hear all the time,
Oh my gosh.
AI,
Yeah.
AI. So reading your book at the same time when AI is coming out,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my God. I talked to a young person this week. He's going off to college, and he said something so interesting. He's like, I didn't realize this was happening because I don't have anyone in school like that now. And he said, oh yeah, it's kind of boring because like the teacher will assign something to read, like a story or a book or whatever, and we're supposed to all, then discuss it in class. But all the other students are using AI to just summarize it. And so when it comes to the discussion, there's
Gosh.
no discussion because everybody's read the same summaries and doesn't have any other viewpoints. He goes, I'm like the only one. I'll bring something up, but nobody knows what I'm talking about because they didn't actually read the thing. They
Wow.
just read the same AI summary. And I thought, wow, that's really pathetic.
Yeah, and I'm already so I have never engaged with that GP chat, and I plan not to. And that's like one form of resistance, okay? And there's several reasons for that. And one of them is the environmental toll. So when I learned about how much water one of those prompts takes, how many gallons of water, because what we're not seeing the behind the pictures is that for all this data, for the more, processing needed, computer processing needed for something like that, that means more resources. That means more water.
Mhm.
It's like
Or
we're
electricity. Hmm.
electricity. And well, one reason it's water is because a lot of the data centers are in like places like Arizona where there's not much, where there actually already isn't a lot of water, but it's very hot and it takes more electricity to cool the machines. The machines need to be kept cool in the data centers. So they use the evaporative cooling, which is with a lot of water, because it's cheaper. It's still cheaper than electricity. So they're allocating water. I mean, we have to look at what resources we're allocating to machines instead of humans and animals and plants. It's amazing how much. It's staggering. And so it's not a cloud, it's fields. It's used to be forests, it used to be meadows. They're putting in the bottom of the ocean to help cool them. Because they get hot, when they're being used, they need more electricity. Right. I mean, at some point in that, they need more electricity. That means we need to find more ways to get electricity. That means, again, always more environmental devastation with each step of this. It's more. And the thing about AI, I learned, is that it's in such demand already. And this is like manufactured demand, right? If we hadn't heard of it, would we be asking for it? Are we asking for it? Did you ask for it? Did anybody
Hmm.
I know ask for it? No, it's just like, this is what you now want. This is what you want next. You have to have it. It's everywhere. We opened the Zoom thing. What did it say? Did you see that? AI as your companion?
Hmm.
Just the terms they used to like companion, and I actually somebody forwarded me an article recently about how more kids in the UK are turning to AI chats for companionship because they're lonely.
Hmm.
So this is, I mean, it's frightening on many fronts, but the first thing we need to understand is, what is it doing to our environment to do this? And is it worth it? What's it really going to benefit us? How is it going to benefit? Is it benefiting us? I doubt it, because I mean, the promise is that there's always a promise, and it's tends to be empty, because all we have to do is look at the past promises and what
Right.
happened. You know, in the current, even just now, are you happier? Are you wealthier? Are you healthier? Do you have more free time? Really? Are you spending that with loved ones? Are you doing it, things you want to do in your life? Are you wealthier? Any of these? No. And that's what we were promised. And it isn't true. So we have to stop believing the promise. And so we're still believing, we're still being gullible. We're still falling for it. We're still chasing the carrot that's being dangled in front of us. And it isn't happening. Technology is not going to solve the problems technology created. And that's what we're trying. It's a lazy way out. It's like, we'll just let AI do it. AI will do it. What does that mean? It means children are dying in the Congo and mines collapsing. They're being buried alive because they're having to mine the resources for AI, and for your smartphone. And this is reality. And it's like they're just women are raped, human exploitation, environmental exploitation. It's always there. And it's just worse and worse. And what is it giving us? You get a better summary for something you should have read, or something you should have researched yourself. I mean, what happens to your brain when you don't use it? You
lose it.
You lose it. All these things, and it's like just being forced on us. And it's almost like a lot of things, it doesn't even become an option anymore. AI is just going to do it. AI for government. There's AI programs for government governing us. I mean, years ago, I heard there was a survey. BBC was doing this, right? Like, what do you think about AI as govern your government? Wouldn't that be better to have an unbiased, like it's seen as like the machines are better than humans because they don't have biases. So they're going to be better
Except
judges.
someone programmed the machine, right?
Except for somebody programmed, right? But supposedly AI is self-learning, right? But what are they learning? Even if it's beyond program and it's learning, what's it learning from? Google search engine,
Right.
Wikipedia, all the mainstream sources, it's still programming. It's
Right.
still programming because it's not getting to anything beyond the mainstream stuff that's what it has access to. It has our garbage in, garbage out, right? Same model.
It's still
Right.
pulling from to other technology, right? It's not
Right.
from real world
And
experiences.
it isn't. And when do you want to be judged by a machine that's incapable of understanding what it's like to experience being a human? That doesn't have compassion. There's no leniency ever. I mean, we all have the experience of like police who are disconnected from being human and who act like machines when they're judging you, giving you tickets. We've had a slew of like parking, things lately that are like so predatorial, and they're wrong. Like they gave us a ticket when we weren't, when we didn't deserve it. In a few instances, now we have to fight that. And what do you get when you call in or do anything? A machine. You have the robot you're talking to, not a person. It won't let you get to a person. It's the gatekeeper. It's protecting the people. It's protecting the companies. You can't get any justice. You can't get justice from a machine. They can't understand you and your experience and what may have gone wrong. It's like, that is the worst direction to go in. While humans are flawed and can do, make mistakes, do you want that mistake to be made by a human or a machine? I mean, this is the kind of question. I read a lot of Sherry Turkle's books, like Alone Together, and for years now, and she did research a long time ago already about robots and robot companions and where that was taking us. And and some people she talked to, like, because the first thing they're doing is like in nursing homes, like, they're understaffed and they've sometimes abused the patients, and we'll just get a machine to flip them over when they need to be flipped over in the bed. A machine that can't really understand when they're hurting you, too. I mean, and like,
That's not human contact.
yeah, the content. I mean, how is that gonna? And so one interview, she had with a patient, like, asked about that, like, how would you feel about a robot caregiver? Like, and he said, because of the abuse issues in the nursing homes and things, he said, he said, that would be so much worse to be harmed or not even harmed by a robot and be handled by a robot than a human. He's like, I'd rather be abused by a human, because at least a human has a story. At least a human, something that he could relate to and understand and like forgive, maybe, right? And have compassion for. Like, the machine doesn't have that. And it's just,
Although I did hear that
Mm,
Disney made a movie about a kids movie about a robot and how it then that's like the main character and that
good.
they show that it's like learning love and empathy and all that. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is all
No,
well, that's to get
it's
them.
propaganda, and it can't learn love and empathy because it can't have a human experience and it can't have emotions. It can mimic
You're
love
right.
and empathy. It can mimic emotions. It's a very big difference between mimicry and experience. And
Right.
a machine will never have that. And we are not the same as machines. And we're being told that we are. And nature isn't the same as a machine to be. It's not, it's this mechanistic view of everything and reductive view and trying to see everything as parts in something in a machine. And it's beyond that. And there's mysteries that we don't understand and we never will. And that's okay. It's okay to not understand. We don't have to dissect everything. We can experience it and not even be able to speak about our experience. But that's the joy, right? Is that you
Yeah.
can't explain
You
what you
know.
felt and your connection and there's something that you can't really ever describe and you can't dissect it in a lab and you
Mhm.
can't explain all the mechanisms of all of it and
Right.
that's okay and it is that need to control that's manifested that is toxic and that manifests in these elite bodies
Yep.
feeling that that's the ultimate goal is control, is to is dissect and control, manage everything. But that's a toxic, you know, um,
Mhm.
state to be in, and it's destructive and self-destructive. It's destructive of everything. So I mean, think one of the biggest things we could do is to step back from that thinking, and always thinking that we need to dissect and everything. And I've had to just in my own defense of like, well, this is my experience with these technologies and how it's harming me. I've had to look into a lot of like science that's, lab science and proving harms by torturing animals, which is like,
Mhm.
I don't like to even present that research because it's like, well, how did they get to this conclusion? They tortured animals, innocents, like they imprisoned animals. And this is what we accept, even the fact that we even accept that as a basis for scientific proofs. And that's what people want to hear before they make any decisions about or even believe you in your story and your experience. It shows how disconnected we are and that we've accepted that. That's another a level of alienation, alienation from life form that people disconnect from their empathy and compassion. They think for a greater good. And that's why I guess I'm saying with these elite evil, I mean, I do agree they're being evil and they're, but that they are disconnected because they are rationalizing this, possibly. Maybe they're not, I mean, to say they're not probably maniacally laughing and going, we're killing them all. Isn't it wonderful? They're suffering. I don't know. Maybe some of them do that, but it's more that they're rationalizing and saying it's necessary. It's necessary, the suffering they're causing because of the greater good of, for example, this came up in somebody fighting smart meters on their homes in terms of the health and the privacy issues, right? The privacy infringement. I think they argued it like against one of our amendment rights of like the privacy rights, right? Because you can use those to track, monitor, people's just by their energy usage. You can figure out which appliance they're using at what time of day. You can basically track movements of people in their homes, what they're doing, data collection, privacy rights. And I think it was the Supreme Court level, they tossed it out and said, well, the need for police and or for that policing body of our government to serve for surveillance trumped the rights of private, like it's
Right.
more important the greater good of like stopping bad guys, um or like is tracking what they want to track. That's the greater good in their mind. So they could say, well, this is going to have this fallout and it's going to harm people, but it's it's for the greater good. So that's, and you define that, and then you just start to trample on individual rights, and then you harm people and you cause suffering. And then it's like, well, who's really determining what that good is as well? In it, is it good? Anyway, it's
It'll be, and if Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and Elon Musk have their way, it'll be a robot that they programmed that will make that decision.
absolutely. And I
And that's
mean,
that's
yeah.
the harm, I think. And again, that what you bring up, that's our work. And that's like a lot of what we're talking about, the rights. And so should nature have rights? Corporations have rights, humans have rights, and all these things that, there's always going to be conflicts when you recognize these different rights. We're not saying there's ever going to be perfection, but now if we're going to there's already been things about should robots have rights?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like that whole thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
so eventually they're going to play into it too. We're not going to let nature have rights, but we're going to let robots have rights. I'm like, yeah,
Amazing.
people can't see where this is going. I mean, it's like, and there is a lot of our work, this Truth and Reckoning, right? The podcast, what we call it's like, it is at least being able to verbalize. And that's why I appreciate your book and I appreciate this conversation, because at least being able to talk about some of these things, and then we have to reckon with them. It doesn't mean, and I've changed my perspective and point of view, and you have probably too in your, in research and just different experiences and meeting different people. And it's like, oh, maybe, and I think that's the beauty also of being human, that we can evolve in our thinking if we allow ourselves to even hear and read or be exposed to different, thoughts and experiences of other people. But anyway,
I think we are in sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, we are in a dangerous place right now with embracing this idea that and AI bots and whatever could be on the same level as humans, and that, these rights should be the same and extend it to them, and that and I've just asked the question, why are they making them to look indistinguishable from humans? That's the goal, that we wouldn't know if you're talking face to face if it's a human or a robot. Why? It's just, and if not to even just on a psychological level reduce us in our thoughts about what it is to be human, which is in a way a spiritual danger, and it's reductive, and it's like, well, I don't matter. I'm just like a machine. So, right. And then you start to think of yourself differently and other people differently. And then we treat each other differently, and we treat each other with less empathy and compassion. And then it's okay to harm and to imprison and to do these things because we're just, and to isolate and keep each other from human contact because of this idea that we're just machines, and it doesn't matter if we're in nature. We could have virtual nature and that'll be enough, and we can just do all this connecting online and with a screen, and that's fine, and our children can be raised by technology, and that's fine because it's all is equal. I mean, I taught.
But see, the superior to it's interesting what you just said, though,
Superior
because the
to.
idea that we've convinced ourselves we're superior to nature, right? So that's why we can dominate and control nature. But so think about what you said about the machines. So if they actually, it's not that we're equal, that humans, they want to maybe get it to the point where machines are superior, that we view machines as superior to us, right? Then they can control all living, beings, not just nature, but the human beings that are alive as well.
Because they're convincing us that our emotions are bad, like that they cloud our judgment, that
the negative.
Carrie, even love is bad and it's messy. It's all that, and that's the kind of attitude toward nature people have, where they want to control it. It's messy. It's things aren't like they want to just like it's unpredictable or something. We want to be able to predict everything, and you just take that soul and spirit out of everything, and what are you left with? I mean, is it even worth being alive? Which you can see statistically, again, evidence that it doesn't feel that way, and children especially are killing themselves because they don't feel like they matter, and they don't have a place in this world, and they don't think that they're anything more than that. And they're encouraged through programs and algorithms toward self-harm and suicide content. The fact that there's websites out there encouraging kids to kill themselves. This is why the internet is so anti-human. They get this idea that it's anti-human. Is even one of the founding internet developers said it was going to just, even without the intent, would just become anti-human because of the design of it. And again, design, to me, why is it designed that way if they know it will become anti-human?
Exactly.
Right. And because it's the machine, if the algorithm is the behind everything, it's not a human making decisions, not a human studying you and directing, steering, cybering you in cyberspace, the steered space, then it's anti-human. And so it won't care about what content children look at and what it does to them, because it doesn't have the emotion to care, doesn't have the capacity to care and understand that.
Exactly. And I even wrote in there too, if we're trying to get people to understand they are nature, right? So then take that, so then it's anti-nature,
Right.
is as
Absolutely.
well,
Right.
right?
Oh,
Because
totally. And
we
and
are.
just again, if you look at the actual destruction happening in order to create and sustain machine life, I mean, redefining life, even that it's not just biological anymore, that there's something that's
Right.
non-biological, that there's synthetic life, there's synbio, that's more psychological, like mind tricks, just kind of like and influencing us to think that way. And I've just I know you're trying to wrap it up here. I don't know how much time we actually are speaking
Yeah,
for
we should
today.
probably wrap
I
it
don't
up.
know. We didn't actually talk about that when we started because I wasn't sure. But an interesting kind of story. I actually spoke with a bio AI developer recently, and I was in a position where I couldn't really tell him everything I wanted to because I was guiding him on a trip down the river on a kayak. So I was like, it's a client, right? So I said, so are the AI bots, the robots gonna take over? I'm like, just kind of in a playful way. Like, he said, well, just not any more than children take rule when they grow up. And he's comparing them. So he actually had this whole thing. He's saying it's not different from children growing up and taking over. Like robots are growing up, they're learning. And he said humans are programmed too. And I said, is it all programmed now? Or is it like how much program and how much is it like off script now? Are they just like really thinking? And he said, no, it's the programming. He's like, that's all done. They're just learning. Like they're, kind of talking about them like they're sentient. And, because they're learning now themselves and they're not, no more programming input. And, it's kind of out of their hands, I guess. And it's just the same way children, grow up and they get programmed at school, but then they grow up to rule, take over. So it's no different. So we shouldn't be any more afraid.
Oh,
But
yeah, except they're
machines,
human. Children are humans.
and he's saying it's not different. And I thought, wow,
Yeah.
and that's amazing. I could see that he was serious. Like he believed that. He seemed like a nice guy.
Yeah.
Um, but I said, well, and I made it kind of humorous because I didn't want, again, like my position wasn't one where I could really, really go into this and debate with him. I said, well, if one of those AI bots, that looks like a human comes anywhere near me, I'm going to bash it with a bat. Because I said, it's just frightening. I said, why? I said, it's like all my nightmares from childhood of dolls coming to life and everything. And I thought, I'm like, so don't get one of those near me. I'll just, but it's probably listening to me say that right now. It's like, like assessing me as my threat level.
Right.
To take me out before. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, well, then what? They get access to weapons. They get access
You'll be
to,
on their target list. Yeah.
right? I mean, but they're making decisions. I mean, and they're gonna, take over just the way children would when they grow up and, positions in government or whatever, and they get to do pre-crime assessments, and somebody doesn't like the AI, what they're doing, saying, and, take us out. I mean, it's like we're just like creating all the nightmares, dystopian futures that we also, watched in these movies. It's like, why are we doing that? We didn't have
I know that I thought were like crazy. I know because I have a son, right? So I mean, he watched like The Matrix, thought that was a great movie, or like the Terminator movies and all that. Thought they were like, I'm like, oh no, this isn't going to ever happen. And here I'm talking to you, and like, yes, we're talking about it happening. Yeah.
Why don't we leave that as fiction? Why do we want to make it nonfiction? I mean, right?
Reality.
We have a choice. Why can't we stop that? Why are we doing it? I mean, it's just like, it's incredible.
Like that young man, and you're kind of, it's like, but you are like the child. Like you need to grow up and become an adult in the room and say, just because, like you had said earlier, and I say that just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So. Well, I think we should, we could go on and keep talking.
Yeah,
No, I'd love to talk to you about your other books too, but I kind of want to end it with, where can people find your book and purchase it, and to make sure they have that information.
Oh yeah. So I mean,
too.
ironically, from my Amazon, but yeah, I mean, also Barnes and Noble. I actually would love to move off of these platforms, if I could find an alternative. And this is where we're a little bit stuck because I don't have alternatives. I don't have an affordable one. If I were to just really find a printer to do it, I don't know, I'd have to charge $100 a book or something. I don't, it's just, I wouldn't be really available to people. I mean, maybe that's an excuse. I mean, maybe if we all start just saying, no, I'm not going to do this. I don't agree with this company or whatever. And, but it's sad that we're at this position where there's so many monopolies and we don't have choices, or it looks like we have a choice. Like, oh, like, I remember Facebook, and I got off Facebook and people are like, well, why not Instagram then? It's better. And I'm like, it's still, and it turned out to just be owned by Facebook, and it's all the same.
They buy it all up.
I mean, they buy it, and the antitrust laws are, not in play. I mean, they actually have tried to take down, Zuckerberg a few times with those, but it hasn't happened for some reason. The same reason nothing changes with these regulatory agencies and why we can't put our faith in them.
Yeah.
But again, so I mean, I'm not perfect here, but I do try to limit my internet time, and so I do not do social media. I'm not on Substack. I just have one website that I own, as much as I can own something like that. Is wifi-refugee.com, and you can find links. You can buy books from me if you're in the US and you want to bypass those, you don't have to buy directly from the companies, and it does benefit me more. I get more, from royalty from that. You can contact me via my website. There's a contact form, and you can, give me your address. We'll work out something. You can send me a check. You could send cash if you want in the mail. We don't have to use all the
I like
programs.
that. A check. What
Yeah.
are
So I do. People mail me checks. People write me real letters. I actually appreciate that a lot more than emails. I'm trying to email less. I think we all have too many email correspondence, and I try to keep those, because I'm trying to spend less time online, and I encourage other people to do the same. I don't have an ebook this time because I also want people to read this in print, because the experience is really different.
Right.
And I would
sit outside. You can sit outside. That's what I did, and I can hear the birds chirping while I'm reading the book.
Oh yeah, so much better. And also, you're not exposed to all the harmful chemicals and blue light and all that, and you're not distracted as much. Like, it's not, you get good distractions in nature, not the kind of stuff on the internet. I would actually I'm trying to get people to buy more, so I could get off Amazon if they bought from Barnes and Noble, and it's so much better printing quality that it's a couple more dollars, but because the costs are a little higher, but it's a better investment, and it's a higher quality. So just try to buy it from Barnes and Noble. And if you buy from me, I'll be having those copies too. So the better printed ones. I am trying to move away from that Bezos AI,
part of that resistance
platform. Yeah, that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah. We didn't create this culture we're all born into, Shannon, so I'm not blaming you or anything. I mean,
we should try to start creating options, and once we do that, we could get out of it. So
and that is doing something. A lot of people don't. That when they ask us what to do, and I'm like, well, talk to your neighbors, build community, build local, and they don't get that. That's actually no. But what can I really do?
That's what you can do, and it makes a difference. It makes a difference. We'll have this trickle effect, snowball effect. I mean, it matters, and it also it takes us out, like, staying in a more humble state, not thinking of yourself as like you have to save the world and humanity, because you can't. It like start to actually care in a genuine way for your neighbors and everybody you encounter every day, and give them. How you can do that is give them your full attention. That's not distracted with your portable tech. It's such a different experience. Like, I get to go into the store and talk to people, face eye contact.
I love doing that.
It's great. And it's like, and that person in that moment matters to me more than anything else. And they feel it. And that's what we want. That's what we all want. And that's what we all crave. And that's what nature wants. It wants our attention. It doesn't want us to just walk through and go, take pictures of it because we're right away post to Instagram because we just want the dopamine hits of all the likes. It wants us to fully be present and appreciate it. Look at these flowers. They're trying to get your attention. They're so beautiful. They're not beautiful enough. They're not as beautiful as the picture online on the screen. I mean, like, you're not present then if you can't appreciate that, and that butterfly and that, I mean, it's like, and I now understand that so much more profoundly than I ever did before because of how I'm living. I mean, I'm so grateful that I became sensitized to this stuff. It was really hard, and I had to move a lot, and lose a lot of income and just the uncertainty and, uprootedness. But now I get to live, so I don't have electricity in the house, no electricity. We have a little bit, I mean, we have a battery that we power, and then we get lights. Christmas lights those are the lights we have in our house. That's the
Yeah.
extent of the lighting.
Yeah.
But I'm so much more in touch with my world around me, and getting into gardening and everything, and like being fully present, because I don't even have a radio on. I don't have distractions that people have that accept as normal, and all that, the noises that we make, and and I do think that there's I'm sorry, we're wrapping it up, but I think this is an important thing to leave with. And this I actually got from watching Planet of the Humans, and that man, something Solomon said, he thinks that we're afraid of death, and that's our motivation and a lot of our distraction. Because when you are in touch with the natural world, you see death around you all the time. You see the
Mhm.
cycles of birth and death, and it's beautiful. I mean, but you get to see the beauty in all of that. And I think, but we're so resistant to it, and that's part of our cultural kind of brainwashing, I think. And I think a lot of these AI developers are just very insecure, and they're very afraid of death. They're so disconnected, and they're really maybe looking for a technological fix, opportunity, immorality. They have immorality already,
Yeah.
but they don't need an opportunity for that.
You want immortality.
But
Yeah.
but but they are so disconnected. They think that the brain is your life, and if you can just download it into a machine form, that you'll be alive forever. I mean,
Forever.
it's just
I know.
it's insanity. It's insanity. They're sick. And
Yeah.
again, and the sickness is the disconnection. And but when you're there in nature and you see all the death life cycles, and the peace, and there's something profound in that. Again, it's hard to speak about, but give yourself the opportunity. I mean, you're
Mhm.
fighting it, you're resisting it by the distractions, by the entertainment, the constant noise. But if you give yourself that opportunity for stillness, and in that, centeredness and groundedness, and that beauty, and see the death, and see the life and the death, and the life and the death cycles.
Yeah, it's all about balance. And see,
Yeah,
we're out of balance big time in
exactly.
this culture.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Shannon.
you. Yeah, this is
I
wonderful.
I can't imagine what book you're working on next, but
Well, I'm taking a break this summer, and I'm getting outside every day, and lots of wonderful connection with natural world. I'm working on There's two books, and one is about the vitamin scam. So like it kind of goes kind of like the shots fired, that kind of
yeah.
research, medical stuff.
Mhm.
But the other is about, you'll appreciate, is about the green energy scam.
Mm.
So my Operation Greenwash chapter in the book is, I actually reduced that. I had like something twice as long, and I realized that's going to be like the other book. So I've already got a lot of it done and written and researched, but I'll need some
Well,
time.
and you
to finish it up.
mentioned my coworker in that, Max Wilbert,
Yes, yeah,
who
great,
Great Green
yeah,
Lies. Mhm.
yeah, and
So
that
brilliant.
as well. Yep, I've got
Yeah.
those. That I've got a lot of books waiting for me to read this winter, and then I'll get into it.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
more
great.
to
We'll look
come.
forward to that because, yes, we know what a big problem greenwashing is. So,
Exactly, I know.
all right. Well,
Well,
thank
thank you,
you.
Tish. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Enjoy the rest of your day and
Me too, yeah,
outside.
you as well. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go outside again.
Good. Get away from all this screen stuff.
Yeah.
We
Hope you
appreciate
do
that
as
you got in
well.
front of it for us to share your
Oh,
story.
thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right.
Right.
Take care.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye.
I want to thank you for listening to our show and let you know a few ways you can support Truth and Reckoning. First, share this broadcast with your friends and family. Leave a positive review via your podcast app. Visit the Truth and Reckoning YouTube channel and leave a thumbs up and a comment. The full scope of the work of CELDF, including this show, comes with a financial cost. So if you're able to make a donation, go to CELDF.org. That's CELDF.org. But most importantly, our goal for this show is to empower you to take action. So the best way you can show your support is to get involved with your community and protecting the place where you live. Thank you very much.